Alright, I'm having to film this a tad early. So there are 2 books I'm in the middle of that I probably would have finished by the end of the month, but they're going to be in the August wrap-up because that's just how filming's working, so that I can treat myself to a mini trip with friends. I know all of you guys care deeply about the exactness of a monthly wrap-up. But I actually was able to split things into rough categories. I had read 12 things. I put them into 4 categories. That's fun. So let's start with my least favorite category, and that's going to be the books that tried to put me into a slump. And I don't even dislike these books. It's just that these are the books that made me feel the slumpiest this month. Let's start with the least egregious, and that would be Dead House Gates. I have a live show with Stephanie and Roger. These are my friends, and we're just very slowly, very casually reading Malazan. Roger's rereading. Right now, Stephanie and I are rereading with the intention of, in 5 million years, finishing the series. That's our goal. So if you want to know all of our spoiler thoughts, well, many of the spoiler thoughts, we have them in the Dead House Gates live show. This was just mostly that I was kind of ready to be done with it, and he just has a dense writing style that can make my brain a little slumpy. It's very description heavy, which is just hard for my brain, and it's just long. Like, it's a little long in an indulgent way that I'm glad exists for the people where it works perfectly for them. It just doesn't work perfectly for me, so there is a lot of stuff that I would cut to make it ideal for me and my tastes, which just makes it a little bit more of a slog to get through, even though there are brilliant moments. There are brilliant chapters and moments that I like. It's just also paired with a lot of boring moments. It's just both for me. So that is what it is. Next up was Butcher of the Forest by Primi Mohammed. Yeah, I don't know why this was boring to me. I don't know why I was slumping through this. It's a dark fairy tale or fairy story kind of thing. Dark like Brothers Grimm dark. And we have this forest that's real messed up. We have these kids that are the children of this tyrant who go into the forest and makes it this person's problem, who's the only person who's ever gone in and come back out, and so she has to go in and save them, or else the tyrant will destroy her village. And I think, and this happens to me a lot in some books, so this is just a style that doesn't always work for me, is our main character is purposefully repressing history from us because they are not dealing with their traumatic past. But they're also so distant from it that they don't feel like a person I can be with, if that makes sense. I'm just so distant from them because they're so distant from themselves. And this has happened to me a few times this past year, and it just doesn't work for me. It doesn't make me feel connected in a way where I'm invested. So although it was cool and it was creepy and I saw it was happening, I just wasn't invested. And then when we have the whole needle drop of the what happened to her, it just didn't land at that point because I didn't feel the suspense for that. So yeah. And I also just think I don't cope this way, so it's just harder for me to relate to it, because even when I am ignoring how much something in my past has hurt me, I don't ignore that the thing exists. For example, I am someone who's way more flippantly going to just say something that is intensely traumatic, just be oh yeah, and that's when this thing happened in my life, and it makes people around me a little shocked, but it's just for me, my coping is to just acknowledge it and move on and pretend it doesn't matter, which is untrue and it's unhealthy in its own way. But I just think I don't relate to the whole oh, I am so not thinking about that, it was so traumatic, it's just a dark hole, you know? And even then, usually you can still have personality. I was lacking a personality. Maybe that's what it is. To be so distant that I don't feel a personality. And again, that's just me and my taste. So I had an issue here, and so it was kind of boring. I mean, I did finish it when I had insomnia, so to its credit, I guess it wasn't so boring that it put me to sleep. I was hoping that it would put me to sleep. But alas, no. That is when I finished it, is when I was up at 3 a.m. for no reason. Next up is Stone of Farewell. This book was much better than the first book. I'm not going to rant and rage about it. I think it's interesting. I see the Game of Thrones in this one. A Song of Ice and Fire getting pulled from this makes a lot more sense than from the first book. The first book feels like Realm of the Elderlings. This one feels like A Song of Ice and Fire. It's too long, and it doesn't have any of the payoff that I normally get from a Song of Ice and Fire book. Because, at least for the first 3 A Song of Ice and Fire books, I always felt by the time I got to the end, it was worth my time. Not so really for books 4 and 5, personally. That's just my opinion and taste. I read those, gosh, how long ago did I read those? In college, a while ago. But yeah, this was just like, it was so long that by the time we got to the cool stuff at the end, I was just like, do I care anymore? And that's where I'm currently at. I currently do not dislike anyone that much, and I do not care that much. And so I've read about half the trilogy so far. You'd think, no, Angela, you read 2 of the 3 books. No. The 3rd book is very long. We're going to have our live show in August on, I think, August 10th. I've been burned before by saying I'm going to DNF this series, so I'm not going to say that I'm officially DNFing this series. But I am not going to be reading the 3rd book anytime soon, because that's, like, I mean, maybe in 3 weeks I'll feel recharged enough, but, like, wow, did that put me in an audiobook slump. Like, real bad. And I wasn't reading it all the time. I took breaks to read other things. But it's just, like, I really didn't care that much. And the next book is 60 hours long. And yes, I read them at 2 times speed, but that's still 30 hours. Like, to read a Stormlight book, but it not be a Stormlight book, like, I like Stormlight, so it's worth it for me to spend 2 weeks only reading that one book. I don't know if I have that type of buy-in for this. I don't know if I'm that level of masochistic. We'll see. But this was fine. Just made me a little slumpy. I do think it's at least a 1.5 stars better than the first book. I think I probably still only give it 3 stars because I was quite bored at the end. But, like, objectively, it's like 3.5 to 4 star quality of a book in my head. All right, so next up we have a category that, what did I put these together and I don't actually know why. Oh, these are all interesting romances. And hear me out, only one of these is a romance, okay? So we'll start with the one that's least like a romance and work our way through. Again, my categories got a little weird. So City and Glass by Nevo. I don't want it to be a romance, just so we're clear. I don't want it to be about the love between these 2 entities, but it is, okay? And you should know that going in. Because I don't think I really knew that. I thought it was about, and it is about, like, it's not that it's not about this thing, where we have our demon who loves this city and needs to recover from the demise of this city and watch it get built back up again. And there's a lot of flashbacks to remembering the city in its heyday or at different iterations. So that theme of grief and that type of love, spot on, amazing, glorious, love it. This demon is intertwined with this angel, and they have such a unhealthy, toxic dynamic. And it's larger than life. They're not humans, and the ending of the book truly shocked me. Like, I was all on board for the ethereal nature. I was just weeding my garden, just putzing around, enjoying listening to this book on the 4th of July, because that's apparently when I was gardening. And then the ending happens, and I'm like, wait, what? What just happened? Am I okay with this? And I will say, I loved how much I discussed this book in my Discord, because I truly was so like, wait, what? We're allowed to do this was way more important than I thought it was. And so it's not even that I think that this is meant to be a romance per se, like at least a healthy romance, but there are dynamics between these 2 entities, and they are at least 1/3 of the importance of this book, if not half. So I thought it was a bit odd. The next one is North Continent, Ribbon, and I think I put this here because almost every short story in this is centered around a romance. I didn't realize that till I read like 3 or 4 of them, but almost all of them center around some interpersonal relationship dynamic. They're not going to be like normal romances like that are happily ever after or things like that, but romantic relationships were a through line for me, a ribbon, so to speak. And it makes sense because a lot of the coolness of this world building is that people will have braids, and in their braids they'll have ribbons, and these ribbons represent contracts. And it was always unclear to me what scenario in which you have them shown and which you have them hidden, because then people also keep their hair up so you don't know all of their contracts. It was very interesting, but like a marriage contract would be a ribbon and things like that. So this is a very cool world. It's a very interesting space opera. The politics are very complex. I kind of think it was very fun exploring it in this way, but I will never think about it again unless I'm given a novel to really sink my teeth into it. But that said, I had fun. If you're someone who like wants the taste of complex sci-fi, but you don't want to like dabble in a very long book, this could be good. And like I said, a lot of the character-focused moments are on interpersonal relationships, specifically romantic ones. And a lot of queer ones as well, so if you're looking for that. And then the last one's the only true romance, and this is I Got Abducted by Aliens and Now I'm Stuck in a Rom-Com. The reason why I call this one weird is it's a tonal weirdness, okay? Like, I liked this book. I had fun. It took me a day to read. That's all I ever really want from a romance book, is that I can consume it in a day. It's just a tonal whiplash. So you go from quippy, almost feels like a contemporary romance, but it is on another planet. It is sci-fi, like, and stuff, and it plays with the sci-fi tropes of being abducted, and there is kind of like this chemical that they're all given that makes consent kind of weird because it's like a biological urge, but I do think it's handled well. It's just like, if you do not like that, don't read this book, especially because it goes from being this weird kind of bantery, silly time to kind of like a fanfic erotica. And it is like a throuple situation, so it's graphic. So if you don't like that, don't read it. And so for me, it wasn't that I didn't mind. I don't actually have an issue with any of the things I mentioned. It's just like together was very tonally off. And then the plot showed up, and I just thought the plot wasn't as interesting as their dynamics. Like, I liked exploring the interpersonal dynamics and the different cultures and like who had beef with who. And then we separated our characters to do the plot, and then I was vastly unentertained. Like, the plot itself was not enough for me to not have them be together for 50 pages. Like, I'm like, what are we talking? Like, the whole fun part is you guys being in the same room with each other. Like, that's the fun part. Snide comments and all of that. Like, it is quite sweet at times. That's another thing. It's like, it can be very sweet to very, like, what are you guys suddenly saying? Like, it just feels like they change personalities when you switch to, like, the bedroom scenes. Like, it's very jarring. Very jarring. Not unfun, just jarring. So yeah. Those are what I put in the weird romance category. We have my Caribbean SFF, because I read 3. One is Blackheart Man by Nalo Hopkinson. So it's like a historical magical island. And they are currently free, but they have been occupied in the past. And this is a moment when the occupiers are trying to get a foothold again, either through trade or ownership. And at the same time, maybe a mystical force from the past is waking up. And also, there's something going on with the children getting stolen. There's a whole lot of weirdness happening. And at the center of all of the threads is Vakosi, the weirdest guy. The book opens up with this man trying to fix the plumbing problem for the village in the dumbest way I can imagine. Like, will it work? Maybe. Should he have? No. He thinks he should have with his entire chest, and that people should be thanking him. He is a character. He is unapologetically himself, and he should apologize. Like, he should apologize. And that's kind of like the thematic crux of the story, is that he needs to start thinking as a we and not as an I. And then there's all this other bigger stuff happening around him. I had a really good time with it. I really liked being on this island and like bumbling about and seeing what the weirdness was and like being like, wait, what is happening to the children? Also has really fun in relationship dynamics on this island. Normally people marry into thruples. So if you're looking for something that's like a built into society version of that, it's very cool. So yeah, it's just very interesting. I think one of Nalo Hopkinson's most memorable characters. I've talked about this book a lot in the past month, mainly because I'm still shocked that it only has like 270 ratings on Goodreads. I think it's very solid. And it was on the Ursula K. Le Guin Award in Fiction and the Ignite Awards, which is why I read it. And it's probably going to be my vote for the Ignite Awards, like, realistically speaking. Next is we've got both We Are the Crisis and Ruin Great and Free. I guess I'll just kind of talk about them together, because in my head they're one book. I mean, I guess We Are the Crisis I like a smidge more than Ruin Great and Free, but like they're like one book to me. Because I finished We Are the Crisis and I didn't intend to read A Ruin Great and Free so quickly. I expected that to be like my August read. But then I'm like, no, I have the other book. I must see how this plays out. And so I do think in a video recently, I was like, if you like N.K. Jemison's relationship to gods and multiverses, you should try this series. I think that still holds, but also okay, so it's nothing like the Broken Earth trilogy, other than the fact that I also think of the Broken Earth trilogy as one book. Okay? Where it's like, I guess, yes, there are breaking points, and I can see why there are breaking points, but it's one book, okay? It's one book. So, We Are the Crisis takes place a few years after No Gods, No Monsters. And the whole point of No Gods, No Monsters is the world finds out that magical beings exist. They are real. And it's about how people try to not notice that and how they cope with that. And We Are the Crisis and A Ruin Great and Free is basically continuing the thought experiment of, can coexistence occur and what are the stumbling blocks to get there in the midst of a bigger god battle that people have no idea is going on. So like you have the monsters and the people, and then you have the gods, okay? So we just like have these 3 tiers-ish, even though, you know, the thesis is that gods and monsters and people aren't different, right? But obviously when you are othered and marginalized, you're going to be in a different group trying to defend yourself. And you have a lot of the same characters that you had in the first book. You don't get too many new characters, although you do get a few. There are moments that had me very upset, moments that had me stressed, and moments that I had extremely confused. And the reason why I would read all of these very close to each other is it's really hard to remember things. Another thing I need to bring up is I read The Lesson earlier this summer. I love The Lesson. I think this is kind of required reading. I think The Lesson is a part of this series. Like, I think if I was giving a reading order suggestion, I would say read No Gods, No Monsters, We Are the Crisis, The Lesson, and then A Ruin Great and Free. I will be curious if people read that third book and haven't read The Lesson, how they feel about certain chapters. Because it's not like where I'm just like, you should read Warbreaker before Oathbringer in Sanderson. That's a small Easter egg. This is lifted characters and kind of follow through of character arcs from The Lesson. And I would have felt so confused without those details. So that's, I mean, I love all 4 of the books, so I don't feel bad telling you to go read another 280 pages of Cadwell Turnbull. You know, treat yourself. It's a great time. But it's a fascinating project. And I think I need to read it all again because it is so many characters and so many connections that I do feel like and maybe this is why A Ruin Great and Free isn't as strong for me as the others, I do feel like I was not sure of my footing and what I should know and what I shouldn't know. And if I hadn't read all of these close to each other, I would have been even more confused about the interconnectivity. So I thrived on it. I love interconnectivity, but I was getting close to my breaking point, and I'm glad that these are all relatively short works that I could read within quick succession. He has such a digestible style for my brain. And I do love how much we still got slice of life stuff in We Are the Crisis. And I think that's what's missing from A Ruin Great and Free that I miss a little. I love the minutia of day-to-day life in a crisis. I do. I like watching people live when the world is burning around them. It's a thing I enjoy, and that is in No Gods, No Monsters, The Lesson, and We Are the Crisis. And it's just a little bit less in Ruin Great and Free. I think but like that makes sense because it's the third book in a trilogy, and you have to like handle the stuff. So it doesn't quite fall into the trap that a lot of trilogies fall into, but it gets close. It flirts with it. So yeah, those are my Caribbean speculative reads that I've gotten to. And now, these 3 I'm putting together kind of tackle academia in very interesting ways. And I wasn't planning on reading academia-type books, but here we are. We'll start with least academic to most academic, I feel. So The Tusk of Extinction is a novella I read, so I would have read some novellas before voting for the Hugos, and I actually really liked it. So this has 2-ish perspectives, 2 point of views. We have the point of view of an activist for protection of elephants / mammoths, and then we have a point of view for poaching, essentially. It's more nuanced than that, but like it's kind of complicated, but there's like 2 buckets of perspective for the story. And we're doing this thing where we're 100 years from now-ish, maybe even a little more, and there are no free elephants anymore, like wild elephants. And they've just brought back mammoths, but the mammoths don't have any cultural history. They have genetic history, but they don't culturally know how to be mammoths anymore. And there are no elephants to teach them how to be elephants because they're all within zoos and protected wildlife areas because everyone was poaching them for ivory. And so they put the brain of a past scientist or activist into the head of a mammoth. so that she can help the mammoths survive. So she's like kind of one of our perspectives. You get to her history and you get to her present, and it's very fragmented and it's kind of hard to keep track of, but it's fine. And it works for novella space, I feel. And then you have the people who are now attempting to poach the mammoths and how we respond to that. And the reason why I tie this to academia is it's like this institution that chose to bring back mammoths is basically claiming that they have to allow a certain level of poaching to fund this. Because funding is where academia's morals always go to die. It is always the funding. They will always have great ideals until they need to figure out how to pay the bills. So, you know, that's where we start. We start there. And so kind of keeping on with this, we have a novella that I adore, probably one of my favorite reads of the year. And that's how you know it's good, because it's a novella. And I don't like novellas. And that's The Practice, The Horizon, and The Chain. And so this one is about the lip service academia can do. Well, it's not about that, but that's one of the themes I took away from it. So it has 3 parts: The Practice, The Horizon, and The Chain. And it's all kind of part of this like statement, this mantra. And so we start with this young boy who's always lived in chains underneath mining for this space station. And he's brought back up to the world because there's a scholarship that is allowing them to bring in some individuals from the mining place to be educated because they show promise. He basically got a scholarship. Affirmative action brought him up. And so we then also have this individual who is basically a second-class citizen who is trying to work within the system of academia, who's always having all these great proposals and getting clapped for all these things. And so she is the bridge for this young man. And trying to teach him and give him mentorship. And things get kind of convoluted and get kind of messy as she is forced to realize how shallow everything she's doing is, and when he's trying to accomplish his goals. And I think it's quite a hopeful ending point without being so outlandish, because the whole idea is like the system needs to change, but how do you change the system? And you know, the story looks at, well, can you change the system through academia? And the answer that this author gives is pretty much no. And again, it kind of goes to the whole point of academia is just always going to be in the system because it needs the system to support it. Okay? And that's also brought up. So this was just, it rubbed my brain in all the right ways, and it's so lyrical. I think something I mentioned that I want to reiterate is if you like how you felt at the end of The Vanished Birds, you might really like this story. I think there's a lot of emotional overlap there and potentially even lyrical style. I am going to read her short stories and her novel. I am so ready to hopefully have a great time with her other works, okay? And then the last one is the potency of ungovernable impulses. These Malsa Plady books, I love them. Their titles, one day I'm going to make up a title that's just all the pieces put together. Like, I don't even know what all these words mean anymore. So this one, I think a lot of the books have been about academia on this planet Jupiter, and if what they're doing is the right or wrong thing. But this one, more so than most, I felt like was truly the mystery was entrenched in academia. So Plady has a different platform she goes to because one of her old friends from school needs help. She needs to basically figure out who's trying to prevent them from getting to the higher tier in their academia. They're called Dawn ships, but in my head it's like tenure track professor sort of thing. And there's this whole mystery of like who would want to sabotage her and claim that she's doing plagiarism, and what's wrong with this person making their data open source, which that's the most fantastical thing about this book. It's like, what do you mean your college doesn't own the rights to the thing you discovered? You can just choose to do that? That is not a thing that can happen. And so yeah, and like in this entire series, Plady's been having to deal with this divide between the classics versus the modernists. And the classists have been thought of always as being like the higher brow, and modernists kind of being like the underclass of academia, which is totally a thing that exists, especially, you know, you talk about hard science versus soft science, humanities, and like it's a whole mess in academia who's considered to be, you know, better than the others. And so that's something she's always having to deal with, and dealing with the repercussions of book 2, where a big thing happened that really affects her like worldview. And so yeah, so that's the academia part. The Masa Plady relationship part is that Masa has some depression, and she does not respond appropriately. But it's kind of funny. Like, it was kind of funny. But Masa, man, you can't do that. Anyways, I'm just being vague, but it is kind of about them continuing to explore their dynamics. And, you know, Plady still has insecurities, but in this case, it's definitely Masa who needs to, like, get her stuff together. The opening scene of this one is a very vulnerable Masa chapter. Most of the time, all the chapters are Plady, but the opening chapters are almost always Masa. And I'm now starting to wonder if these are in-world books because of something that happened at the end of this one. All I know is I want you all to read it so I can just have like 7 million more of these, because I just love them. I already got my physical copy of the first one, and I'm waiting to get my second one so I can have them, because I think they're very beautiful as well. So yeah, those are the books I read. And so I had a good time, largely speaking. I had a new 5-star, so that was really cool. And I really enjoyed the new Masa Plady book, and I really enjoyed the Cadwell Turnbull series. So like, I had a great time. Even if I had like a slumpy middle, I had a really good start and had a really good end. And so I'm happy with that. What were your highlights of July? And if you just want to leave an emoji to let me know you're here, leave a chain. I know there's a chain. And otherwise, like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.